Hello, Trekies! Thanks for taking the time to buffer with us on this show where a group of nerds talk Trek for an hour each week about whatever the most important topic at the moment is. We'll go around the order, introduce ourselves and projects, then discuss the godlike Q Continuum. I'm Dustin from Best of Trek, Worst of Trek.
So I'm not sure if the screen's going in the right way, so I'm going to assume I'm next. I'm
Yeah.
Mr. Know-It-All. What's up, my know-it-alls? I have a channel on YouTube as well. You can always find me there talking about Star Trek and whatnot, but I'm really excited to talk about the Q.
I'm Eve, and I'm going to actually get my first episode of my podcast up hopefully today. I've been having technical problems, so I'm going to try and get it up before I go to Heroes Night at the Symphony in a full Star Trek cosplay.
Yes.
Awesome. Nice.
And I am Scott, and I'm host of the YouTube channel Opinions No One Cares About.
All right.
Just so not true. We all care.
I've gone too far with my branding now.
Just a smidge of Star Trek news this week. Just a couple minor things to touch on. Paramount's chief of streaming programming, Tanya Giles, announced that Section 31 is still here, I guess. With the vague, it's still in development, we're having conversation speech. I'm not sure that actually means much, but hey, it's news.
Maybe we influenced it last week.
Yeah, if only they could have released it before we did our Section 31 talk.
I was just thinking that same thing. I was like, I wish they would have said that sooner, but yeah.
It's because the awards show is this week, that's why.
Oh, yeah, that's
and
right.
Michelle Yeoh was one of the winners.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's right on, man.
Big thing, winning Golden Globe for best.
Best
actress for everything
everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
No, I, as someone who's formerly in television proper, that is actually a thing. But what they don't tell you is development could literally mean they haven't officially said no. They've just been talking. So talks could be what they did around the water cooler, what they did at lunch. It doesn't necessarily mean the bigness they're trying to make it sound like.
Right. 4 years into an announcement.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
doesn't lead me.
Politicians. It's a political answer.
100%.
Basically. The other little piece of news is that Jerry Ryan has picked up a recurring role in Darkside Season 2 on AMC.
Oh, nice.
A George R.R. Martin produced show, even though he may never finish the Game of Thrones books, he's got time to produce.
That guy's more long-winded than the one who did, Wheel of Time?
Ooh,
Robert Jordan.
He didn't even finish it.
That's what I mean. He's so long-winded.
All right, to the topic at hand. Let's start with the Q before it was Q. Is Trelane actually Q, the son of Q and Q?
Squire of Gothos.
Yeah, man. That was awesome. So in this, you and I talked briefly before the show about this. I actually, when I saw this question, I years ago read a book, the Peter David book. I think it's like Q Squared, and it had dude in it, and I was like, God bless, man. It was a great story. In fact, that story made me go back and rewatch the original episode because I was like, I needed to know what was like and sure enough, man, I would have thought back in the day, now with context, that he was a Q. I'd think that.
I know they've said soft canon he's a Q.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's his book.
Yeah, he does. I've read the book. Yeah, he does have the personality of a Q.
Oh, so much. Absolutely.
Like he's got that over the top, like arrogant, everybody's my plaything kind of attitude.
He's got all of the character traits of a Q for sure.
100%.
Right.
Those sideburns, though. Ugh.
I mean, it's the 60s.
Big old mutton chops. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I feel like they were like,
Elvis.
all we have is these costumes, these old like European style naval costumes, and Gene Roddenberry's like, yeah, whatever, let's do it. Let's make something.
Now, the thing that always threw me off about him possibly being a Q or even a kind of retconning Amanda was in Q2. towards the end of Voyager, where they say that he's Q's son is the first born in the continuum, which always threw me off until I started thinking about that, where I'm like, okay, but the line is in the continuum. Now we know this kid is a kid born with parents, but maybe he wasn't born in the continuum.
Kind of
Kind of like Amanda.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Okay.
But yeah, I definitely there's no way he's not Q, even though it's a beta canon piece that made him Q. He's Q.
Awesome.
What do
Yeah,
you
they've
think
never done anything that said like they never did what Disney did and said, okay, we bought Lucasfilm, but none of this stuff is canon anymore. Paramount, Paramount, CBS, Viacom, whatever you want to say, has always been like, sure, yeah, all that stuff, let's go. You know, so I'm like, right on, man.
It is till it isn't.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what universal force do we think could be responsible for Q dying in Picard?
Entropy.
Maybe.
Like, seriously, I mean, what do you guys think? I'm more of the mind that it's definitely, I think that it's just there is no such thing as infinite. Not really. I think that at some point or another, but they don't tell you, and they've leave this story part open. It could very well be his dying is just a way of like being reabsorbed into whatever makes them as powerful as they are, and then re-spit out as a different persona, almost like a form of reincarnation, if you will, to use a colloquial phrase. But obviously more sciencey and alien based.
Stuff like Odo and the Great Link.
There you go. That's a great physical example.
That's what I was thinking about when I saw the question. Was I'm like, maybe it's like the Great Link, and Q gets his power from the continuum, which means in a sense maybe he gets his life from the continuum, and we know that he can appear as whatever he wants because he's made that quite clear. So it could be like, yeah, sort of along what you were saying, reabsorbed. Maybe something's happened to the continuum and his time or his job, is over. So he's, like you say, being brought back, reabsorbed back in, and dying could just be his way of making it make sense for Picard's sake.
Kind of like when they were brought into the Q Continuum years ago. This is just a representation, so you understand. I love that. That's a great way to look at it. Absolutely.
Yeah, let's bring in another question that we had that's along similar lines. Are the Q wiped out after the 25th century? Because here's the real weird piece. I had assumed during Picard, the first time I watched it, that he was talking about the Q as a continuum are dying. Oh. But he only says that he's dying. So there's some ambiguity there. But in Disco Season 4, Admiral Vance tells us that the Federation hasn't had contact with the Q since the 25th century. So are they all dead? Have they not wanted to make contact? There's a lot of questions here.
Maybe they moved on.
That seems more likely.
That's an interesting question too. Yeah, no, I think that's so. I've always been of the mind that I hate making comparisons, but it's the only way I can kind of give you guys an idea what's in my head. Like Doctor Who, I read the thing where it was like, oh, well, the Doctor's how come someone who's been around so many years only exists in these 50-year period? It's not. That was just a playground he enjoyed to play in. I feel like the Q may not necessarily be, and actually, I don't want to jump into a question you had coming up. They may not necessarily be immortal as much as they can just exist anywhere in time and space that they want to, which thus gives you the impression they're immortal. If I come visit you now and then visit you in 20 years, but I look the same as I do now, you're going to think I'm immortal. But the truth is I'm just hopping around space and time. So it's a weird idea that, they may live outside of our linear concept. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, it also I could also see it being just a way of Disco, being much more serious than the series of the past, and not really having a way to bring in Q in that isn't going to make it like bring the level down and make it a little more silly. So they're just we don't deal with the Q anymore. we've passed them. We're more serious now.
That's what I was thinking, is it was a way to just sort of, make it clear that the Q aren't going to be part of Discovery, because people have mentioned, are the Q going to be part of Discovery? Similar to, does Control become Borg? So that would actually kind of fit, because I mean, Q is silly. The only way they could really bring in a Q would be if it was some kind of darker, more malevolent Q. And I don't know. I don't think I really want to see that.
Kind of like when he introduced the Enterprise to the Borg, because in that episode I was like, wow, Q really is going in a much darker direction with this, isn't he?
See, I feel like that's nothing. No, this is not against anything you guys have said. The sentiment that people might have that Q is silly, I think that is a lack of creativity on the writer's part. Because how engaging and how interesting would it be for getting toward the end of Discovery, whether we're going to get another season past this or whatever else, where you could easily have what you just described, kind of that big scary whatever, and then have something where they have to now deal with either the rebirth of a person, whoever, almost like Doctor Who, a Q that supposedly says he's that they possess. I have part of that guy you knew in me. I get it, and maybe he becomes somewhat of a buffering or saving sort of person. I think that just because he was chosen to be characterized as silly in the past, that's a challenge for a better writer. A better writer could easily come up with a way to incorporate, and you even have him do something that's cute silly. You know what I mean? Before he leaves. So you're kind of like, hey, and they're like, oh yeah, I got whatever. You know what I mean? You could easily do very tongue-in-cheek way of nodding to how silly he was.
Yep. Kind of like that.
That's one of my favorite scenes right there, the mariachis.
I get my powers back. We're going to party.
I love that so much.
Good
Right
times.
on, man.
Well, I always thought that they deliberately wrote John Delancey's Q as more of a trickster, like a Loki type.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but even Loki's had to deal with that issue and again, here I go talking about another series, where in the series Loki, they even addressed, like, he's like, Owen Wilson's like, there's nothing mischievous about what you're doing. Like, what is the deal? So I think that's probably the problem you have, is if you were going to try to interpret that Q-like mischievousness, I think you'd end up with a dark Loki-like character who it wouldn't fit. And then people would complain because, well, it's nothing like John Delancey was, blah, blah, blah. You can't make anybody happy. So,
That's true. So here's a question along all those same lines, and you had just given me an idea of maybe an answer, Eve. Why is the main Q not immortal if the Q have been established as immortal? You just brought up the idea of an evil Q. We know that the Q can kill each other. Maybe there is another Q out for Q. John to Q.
Maybe his ex-wife.
Let's clarify.
Who's a Q?
It could very well be. I mean, he really pissed her off.
Yeah, he did. No, yeah, he did.
Off a redhead, I'm telling you, we're dangerous.
You gotta watch out for them.
Oh man. No, yeah, I can totally see that.
Or maybe his son, decided to go after him for some reason.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Was the trial ever about humanity, or was it always about Picard?
I think it was about Picard, because Picard's the one he consistently went for, the one he consistently toyed with. And at the end, he shows up in Picard literally to finish the story with Picard, not the rest. Because, I mean, he could have easily snapped the whole crew back together if he wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it was about Picard, because he doesn't ever extend his trial of humanity to Sisko or Janeway or any other captains. The way he treats Picard is very, very different.
There's kind of a trial of humanity with Sisko. I mean, he gets to play the space jellyfish game too, but that seems coincidental.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it maybe started out as all right, you're gonna go put humanity on trial and start with them. And then he meets Picard and is so taken by this person who both is pompous in his own way, but also doesn't want to take nonsense and is very much like someone who's it's almost like a like, how dare you? I'm fascinated by the fact you're so disrespectful to me. You know what I mean? Like you don't genuinely fear me the way you should. I'm fascinated by that, and you go from there. I don't know. I think it's, but then so I think maybe it started one way, but very quickly became something else.
Something
know
to point out.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Eve.
Oh, I was going to say, I know Q was originally not even supposed to happen. It was something to do with they got told they were going to have so much time, so they wrote an episode. Then they got told, no, you're only getting this much time, so they chopped it up. And then they got told, no, you're getting all this time after all, so they came up with Q as a way to sort of fill it in.
Mm.
I think it was actually Roddenberry that did that too.
Yep.
Well, because
Yeah,
he loved that craziness, man. He loved it.
The only thing that DC Fontana has ever said that I don't agree with was when she's like, all Gene Roddenberry did was write the Q character into that episode. Yeah, he wrote basically the only thing worth watching in that episode.
Yeah.
Sorry, DC. She's written some great episodes of Star Trek.
Love her.
Unfortunately,
Love
that's
her.
not one of them for me.
Yeah.
My husband was actually saying, and of course he's not a Trekkie, he was saying that these days, if that had been the pilot episode we got for, say, one of the new series, that would have been scrapped right away because people
Yeah, it would.
have been like, what is this
Easily.
garbage?
Too cerebral, way too cerebral for them.
I almost have to wonder if the only reason it went forward is because that pilot was $10 million. That's a lot of money in the 80s.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, nowadays that's
Like, you
chump
kind of just have to go with it. You've spent that much money into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean that so if you look at the old series, like for instance, the original version of the City on the Edge of Forever had big lofty thoughts, and it was crazy wacky sci-fi. You can remember that's where they came from. In that era, they were like, how do we put this? I mean, obviously Gene Roddenberry had his naval history and whatnot, but at the same time, sci-fi was with the pulp magazines, and I mean the comics, I mean the books that they would come out where you could have the short stories. They went deep and hard into the insanity of science fiction and potential out there. So I feel like that's how you get stuff like Trelane in the early days, and then now you get to you get that touch when he's like, well, what about something like the Q? That's him hearkening back to that old era and being like, remember when sci-fi was supposed to be insane and crazy? Let's go. Let's go there. And I feel like we might have almost shifted a little to the other direction, like we've overcompensated in our attempt to be gritty and realistic. And while I love gritty and realistic, I'm okay with giant space entities so long as they're not God on the other side of a barrier. That's I'm good.
God need with a starship.
What does God need with a starship? Yes.
Look, you mentioned there was that Q trilogy where they explained that it was Q's fault he's there in the first place. Like Q's responsible for that.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think the Q Continuum is actually like, as opposed to the two renditions we've seen previously?
Oh.
I would think it's like memorial.
Yeah, like I kind of envision like a big white nothingness. Like the last episode I watched prepare for this last night was Tapestry. And like when Picard walks into that nothingness with Q, I kind of feel like that's what it is, because it's not like they actually need anything there. They don't actually have corporeal bodies. That right there.
Yeah.
So I think that might have been the closest representation to the actual Q Continuum.
You see, you joke. I'm dead. I'm with you. I feel like even though he tries to play the pretense like I'm trying to represent something you'd understand, angelic looking or whatever, it could very well be, here I go again, like Doctor Who. The Doctor never liked the big pompous collars of his people. He always wanted to be someone. So Q very well could be like that, where it's like, yeah, I dress up like you guys and I do the Mexican thing because otherwise I got to wear this. So I'm down. I'm with you. I think that's probably a great representation, and they only take corporeal form as needed.
Sort of like the Great Link again.
Absolutely.
Instead of like a pile of goo, think like a bunch of energy.
I love it. A pile of goo.
Well, I was resin casting some items the other day, and the color I ended up with was very similar to the Great Link, and I'm pouring it out, and I'm like, I'm pouring out Odo here.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Resin is about the same texture and consistency.
Yep.
Could humans ever evolve to be Q?
Well, you seem to think they could, or if not BQ, somehow be even like more powerful.
Well, Q did say that Q were once like humans. So, and he's implied that they're just a more evolved entity. I mean,
Well,
I was watching a documentary on YouTube about like what they think humans could evolve into in different places on different planets. And some of the ideas they came up with were pretty far out.
Giant salamanders.
That was one that came up, but the most common one was insectoid.
Wow.
Okay.
Because insectoid bodies are the most efficient.
Interesting. All right.
Like they're the most efficient for the most number of environments. But I was thinking like maybe they could evolve into something like Q, but it would be millennia down the road.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, I can see that.
Mhm.
Or we need a catalyst of some kind.
Well, and I think you're with your millennia. I mean, like you're talking like billions of years in the future, so you got to evolve to. They would have to evolve to a place where we would have to evolve to a place where our minds become we tap into some sort of extrasensory ability or power, and then sort of take that to its nth degree or level, but not like built a cup of goo, totally, but not like built out of any like there's no like power cell or whatever or drink or something. It would have to somehow just be a natural evolution of our ability to think or whatever, project I don't know, but I mean like it would take a bit, but why not
To go back to Doctor Who, you just made me think Face of Bo.
right.
They've implied that Face of Bo, like it's been implied that Face of Bo is really Captain Jack just evolved at the end of time.
Yeah.
I so wanted to see the intermediate stages of that.
Me too.
When his body like shriveled away, when he started growing arms out of his face.
That's awesome.
Or tentacles.
I mean, Wesley, like if we think of like Wesley Crusher, as annoying as he is, he technically evolved beyond being a basic human.
Yeah, somehow.
Yeah, totally. There you go.
I do not like that look on his face. He just looks like a smug little twerp.
He looks skeevy and like a little cringe.
Good old Will Wheaton.
If you were given Rikers Choice, would you take it? Why or why not?
Whatever. I'm not going to go the moral high ground. Yes, I absolutely would take it in a heartbeat. Have you read my bio? All right, I'm a recovering narcissist, bro. Give me your all power. Let's do it right now.
Yeah, that's fair. Honestly, it kind of makes me think of. I harken back to Superman. Believe it or not.
Okay.
There's this fake interview or something. I don't know. It was with Lois Lane, and somebody asked her, like, so if you were stuck at the bottom of a mine shaft, and you were immobilized and everything, what would you do? And she just says, I'd just be wondering what was taking Superman so long. Because, you've got somebody with all this power and they just expect him to be constantly saving the day. Yeah. And then you're talking about being a Q. If anybody knows you have that power, suddenly you have that on a galactic scale. And honestly, I could see why Q or another member of the Q Continuum would eventually become bored with fixing everybody's problems and go off to do their own thing or cause trouble.
Wow, I haven't thought of it that way. You're absolutely right. Wow.
I almost think, like, on one hand, I would take the power just because I think of all the things I could do with it, just like to go see all the things I've never seen before, stuff like that. But at the same time, it's kind of like, I think it would be along the lines of sort of what Scott was saying, like when you get lottery winners and they try to keep their identity a secret because all of a sudden everybody and their brother, whether they like them or not, is coming out of the woodwork demanding things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wouldn't want that. Like, I wouldn't want to feel like I'm obligated to help people just because I have this ability to.
I was just going to say the Mega Millions, that the big one that's the biggest that it's ever been last night got sold here in Maine.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
And it wasn't me.
No, I know, but the man.
I wouldn't be here if it was me.
Are you kidding me? That's what he's talking about. You should be.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
I don't know who it was.
What's going?
You people would not ever see me again. I
Like,
love you.
Dustin?
There was a lottery winner in the States actually who went and he signed for his check and he was wearing like some kind of humongous mask on his head. Just I wouldn't know who he was.
It's exactly what I'd be doing. I'm having a mask on and a long sleeve shirt because I got noticeable tattoos on my forearms. So
Same here. I'd have to because I got tattooed arms and legs. So.
I'd have someone make me one of those masked singer outfits.
yeah, right.
Walk out there.
I just borrow a dead mouse's head
Oh, there you go.
or Marshmallow's head.
Or you get a giant paper mache made of your own head, because who would think that you would do that?
That would be fun.
Yes, your mask is someone else's face. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Dell has a great question that is almost fortuitous because our next question is, could the travelers be related to the Q?
Okay. I'm going to say no out the gate. However, I do believe that when you start dealing with cosmic entities of that nature, that they all kind of live in the same neighborhood. And by that, I just mean there's like an order of things. Like we're here per se, just because why not arbitrarily put us here? And then there's like whatever is the next order of existence and then above. So I think that when you move in those kind of orders of existence, that you know one another across paths enough. I think possibly the Elorians might have fallen away from that. The Elorians, I think, evolved to a point and then decided, we don't want to go there. We're worried about what you might be. So we're going to be happy with our consciousness being elevated, and we're just going to exist here on this order because we're happy being the oldest grown up in the room here.
Right.
Does that make sense?
You're
It does.
reminding me
Go ahead.
Stargate. What Stargate? Because Daniel Jackson.
Oh,
Daniel Jackson ascends and then gives up the ascension, and I can't remember what the species are called that are the ascended species. I can't remember what they're called. But that's what you just made me think of. Like he goes so far and then he decides no and comes back.
yeah.
So, but I can't remember what they're called.
My initial reaction to this question was no. But then I started watching those Q scenes again from Picard, and what does Q getting Corey away from Soong accomplish? What is his goal there, other than pushing her into the Travelers? So maybe there is some kind of reciprocity between them, at least.
Okay.
Different orders of angels almost.
Yeah.
Like
And to answer,
how in Supernatural they have different orders of angels.
I
maybe
like that.
of different orders of being.
Yeah.
And
why not?
They have almost like they have things like, okay, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, but otherwise we leave each other alone type idea.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
to answer Dell's question, I don't think they get into fights, but if they did, the Metrons would be the adjudicators. Absolutely.
Only if the Metrons can talk like that.
Yeah.
Are you ready to rumble? You know.
I would have thought the Time Lords, but yeah.
Oh,
there you go.
True. Right on.
I would actually go with the Gamesters of Triskelion.
Oh, right.
Oh, that's a good
Want
one.
to fight.
And at least you keep it in context. I love it.
Well, I could totally see it. I'm so like I have to wonder if the Gamesters of Triskelion are almost like a Q type entity in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Dell says I was thinking the Shellyak. Well, those are those species that get offended at everything, if I recall.
Yeah, totally.
So, all right, I'm just going to ask one that's not even on here. What is your favorite Q episode across all of Star Trek? Or least favorite? Take your pick. Or both.
I really dug Q Who, man. I really dug that one. Q Who was a good one.
Which one's Q Who? Because I'm bad with titles.
Where they get shown the Borg for the first time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
In TNG.
Mainly because what you see is he's like, look, I'm ready to join, ready and willing, able to serve, and he's like, ready, what does that mean for you? You know what I mean? And you get to see, and he's kind of like, all right, here, and poof, he He gets angry enough to show you, look, because think of the opposite. Think if Picard had taken the offer and was like, you know what? Okay, all right, you're chief exploration officer. Let's go, whatever. What do you want to show us? It would almost like be the Doctor in Doctor Who. Here's this creature that can go through anywhere he wants, and he's going to take you with him to go see all the stuff. And he's got the instant out button if something goes bad. I mean, I don't know. That's why I like that episode, because you can flip it and think, what if you had taken it? Because introducing to the Borg was very extreme. But imagine meeting the Borg with him on your side, and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, ignore them. They're never going to bother you again." You know, now it's a whole nother game. So I don't know.
It's like we were saying when I had actually watched that episode and was talking about how they said the sensors showed they destroyed like 20% of the Borg ship, and I'm just like, keep firing.
Yeah.
Just keep going, man.
Keep firing, assholes.
For real. Oh my gosh, that's great. Good call, man.
I would say Tapestry is actually my least favorite of the Q episodes, only because it reminds me too much of It's a Wonderful Life.
That's exactly what it is.
And that's got to be one of the most overdone TV and movie tropes ever. The whole, what if I didn't exist, or the path not, like it. To me, it's just too overdone. Plus, I'm getting like serious Quantum Leap waiting room vibes off of the white outfits and white everything. But
yeah,
if I had to go with favorite, it's kind of a toss-up for me, because there's two episodes that I like for different reasons. I like the one where the Q wants to commit suicide.
Death Wish.
That one, yeah, him. Because that one really showed a whole other side to, like, hey, like, this is what maybe that it isn't paradise to be a Q. Maybe it isn't, maybe there's this whole other, side to Q that we didn't consider. And then the other one I like is the one where we get to see him with his son, because watching Q to try to parent is utterly hilarious.
For real.
And I have to admit, like, them casting his real life son was just brilliant.
Oh yeah,
he does the role really, really well. And to me, that gives a bit of a parallel to The Inner Light, where you have Picard acting across from his own son.
very true.
I know when I met John Delancey this year, I asked him about that. I said, what was it like working with his son? And he said, put it this way, he said it was on one hand, he liked it, but on the other hand, it was too much like being at home.
That's awesome.
It's fair. Yeah, Eve, I definitely agree with you about Death Wish. I love that episode for not just for like the moral implications, like not just, a Q that wants to die, but the whole idea of the right to die, and getting, what it like looks like a look at the inside of the Q Continuum, even if it's only a representation we can understand.
Yeah.
To see what it's really going on in there.
It's weird that you phrased it as right to die, because that's a huge thing right now in Canada.
Really?
Yeah. Canada just passed a law. We have the most lax right to die laws in the world now. Literally, like even people with like PTSD and mental health problems now can qualify. And it takes very little to actually be allowed to do it. We had some of the strictest out of the countries that allowed it. And as of March, we will have the most relaxed rules in the world for it.
Wow.
It's weird that you said right to die, because you just kind of like hit on something that right now is an actual issue where I am.
Right.
Because, I mean, there's both sides of the debate there.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when that episode came out, but I feel like that was like an issue in America at the time, or somewhere, or at some point around that.
Well, Europe's had right to die laws for years.
Okay.
Some countries like Switzerland, they've had it for years.
Yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, yeah, I was going to pick something like another favorite episode. Honestly, after watching all this week, I would probably go with Cupid. This was so much fun. And I literally laughed so hard when Worf was like, "Sir, I am not a merry man."
I love those.
That's the best part.
Those are priceless.
That was great.
I like when he smashes Geordie's instrument.
He's like, sorry.
Sorry.
On one hand, the
I'm sorry.
musician he cries. On the other hand, the musician in him is like, thank God we don't have to listen to Geordie play that thing.
Right?
Yeah, as to not beat a dead horse, that might have been a bad choice of words for the particular episode, but Death Wish is one of my favorite. Kind of tied with Eve's least favorite for the exact reasons she doesn't like it. I love Tapestry for the fact that it is a mix of It's a Wonderful Life and A Christmas Carol.
Okay.
I like the Christmas Carol comparison a little more. Right.
It's I mean it's a
I
bit
see
of
the It's a
both
Wonderful
mixed
Life one, but
together.
I really dig that. Yeah.
It's the only thing you can really watch that's kind of Christmassy around Christmas for Trek. But more than that, well, let's just get into a question that we had here. I'm going to skip down to it. Do you think Q actually saved Picard's life in this episode? Or was it just a near-death experience possibly brought on by dimethyltryptamine? Scott, help. Thank you.
Dimethyltryptamine.
There you go. I want to say both, and by that I just mean I think especially in context.
Are you Stranger Things movie there?
I love it.
It's my freaking. Hold on.
Is your phone running through your computer? Mine does that all the time.
Cord.
Part of me is like, go ahead, answer the phone. No, you can't. That's when you get that awesome moment where Scott's like, I'm on my podcast. I can't. No, I'm kidding.
Bring it again.
No, totally. Really. No, I feel like he was at some point, going back to the question, forgive me, that he, I think he was probably very close to dying, but in context of the new stuff, and I'm one about taking the full picture. I'm not going to sit here and exclude whatever. I believe he probably did. He probably, and either that or but he probably did it in such a way where it was like just before he died, which might have broken some rule. He was like, it's like just at the edge, he kind of stopped and then chose to take that lesson, knowing full well Picard probably would never accept a gracious gift such as his life being saved without some sort of attachment to it. And again, I may be giving Q a lot of contextual layers, but I like to believe that Q is more than just that trickster.
I don't know. I mean, it's like he says, even gods have their favorites. I think it's been well established Picard is a favorite of Q's. So yeah, if he's dying, I think he was going to make an effort to save his life. But yeah, as you said, teach him a little lesson first, because he's not going to just accept it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking he took advantage. It was him taking advantage. Like, yeah, Picard is he's dying. He's having his near-death experience, because everything about that episode fits a near-death experience. But at the same time, Q took advantage of it, basically, to impart something, because he's like, I got to impart a lesson. But I think Q might have been waiting to impart that lesson on him as well, because we know Picard has a habit of dwelling on his regrets.
It's true.
That's true.
I mean, the grudge he holds against the Borg in First Contact, and I'm not judging him for that, but it got to the point where, he had to have a woman from the past tell him, blow up the goddamn ship.
Oh, I can see it. The line must be drawn here.
Yeah.
That line.
They have got to hunt his whale.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then she goes, I never read the book.
I love it. He proceeds to quote it because he is who he is. And she's like, yeah, you get the idea. We all know Moby Dick. Come on.
And what you were saying about like gods have their favorites, he always has kind of treated Picard as a pet.
Yeah. But a pet you love.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate to say it, but my pets, I have a dog and 2 cats. They live much better lives than most people. So
my dog.
So yeah, it's like, I feel that. I feel him on that, totally.
All right, so we have a few questions about the Amanda Rogers episode. What impact would Amanda have had joining the Q when she realized she couldn't be among humans?
Oh.
I personally have always loved that episode. For me, that episode, especially like I will still sometimes sit here and just be like, like I'm trying to make someone do something. I'm just like,
Right.
Do the thing, you know what I mean? Because I love that, like, and you see that growth happening, and yeah, dude, I liked it a lot, actually.
I have to wonder if her having to join the Continuum is what later spurs the Civil War. Her introducing ideas or experiences from the human side of things that the Q themselves would not be able to have had experience with. Like, I have to wonder if she was maybe the pebble in the pond.
Though that still would...
Great
that sounds
question.
like a great theory, but
Yeah.
then that makes Q wanting to have a child to bring human abilities into the Continuum to stop the Civil War even weirder than it already was.
But maybe you need human to counter human.
Could be.
Yeah. Why not?
But I was always
Yeah, you
thinking,
get-
like, you can't just reabsorb her and there be no consequence. Like, similar to when Odo brought a lot of his experiences back to the Great Link. Like,
Yeah.
there has to have been some kind of fallout, whether good or bad, from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, does anybody ever wonder what happened to Laz after Odo basically infected him with an STD in one episode and then just left him off in the galaxy to do his own thing? Because essentially, he's probably infected now from linking with Odo.
That's true.
That's very true.
I forgot
I know
about him.
this is way off topic, but
No, but
It's
I get it. I get it.
It's funny you say STD too, because I just saw that meme that goes around every so often with the Star Trek cards, and it's like, what I didn't ask
STI.
for in my life, Odo's first time. It's funny you call it an STD.
It's
Do
probably
you
the
think that
equivalent
yeah, basically is. Do you think that Amanda became the female Q, Susie Plaxon?
I think I was the one who came up with that question.
I'd have to say
That's-
doubtful. I mean, I know that the Q are timeless and we can go back and forward in time, but supposedly they've been together since the beginning of the universe for billions of years.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily discount the possibility that she could be the same entity.
It would make sense then why Q would get the idea to have a child.
Agreed. Yeah.
And we know that
absolutely.
appearance and the appearance thing isn't an issue because Q can appear as whatever they want.
Yeah, but then they still met when he was an immortal being and she was a teenager.
Yeah, but for the Q, it's
Yeah.
age doesn't seem to matter.
The rest of us with our morality.
Consent matters, not age.
Well,
Even at that level, even at that superior
Ish.
level.
Because, I mean, probably not all the Q are the same age anyway, but when you're billions of years old or whatever, like, how do you keep track of, you know?
does
Who's
age
older?
even have meaning if you're omnipotent?
That's what I was thinking, yeah, because they go back and forth all the time. You know, why would age have, because it was implied that age doesn't mean much to them when Janeway doesn't recognize Q Jr. And he goes, well, that's because last time I was a baby. And Q makes the comment about how linear we are.
Mm-hmm.
True story. Agreed. I agree with that. I find no flaw in that logic.
Was Q appearing in DS9 just a way to carry him from TNG into Voyager since it was such a minor one and done between the 3 shows airing concurrently?
Yes.
Kind of seems like it, yeah.
I always kind of thought so because it was like, hey, this is like, I mean, I saw it in syndication and I'm like, hey, there's Q in Deep Space Nine. Maybe he'll show up in other episodes. And I kept looking for him to show up and he never did. And I'm like, okay, maybe it was just, you know, put him in there. We get to see Cisco punch his face in, which gives a lot of satisfaction. But
Picard never hit me.
I love the way he does it.
Picard.
Picard never hits me.
He's like, I'm not Picard. Awesome. No, I love that whole scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was just
There he is.
put together.
Marquis
He's
of
even got-
Queensberry rules.
He's even got the
You had
70s
this picture
orange
ready.
dash.
This guy.
Dell says Irish boxing for the win.
Nice.
I have to admit, I can't see a different way of Cisco dealing with him because Cisco really was very, you know, I don't have
He's the
time for your
anti-Picard.
nonsense. Yeah, he doesn't have time for, because he even says to Worf more than once, I don't have time for your Klingon stuff. Like,
yeah, where Picard basically tries to push Riker into, hey, why don't you kill Worf because he asked you to? And meanwhile, Worf tries to kill his brother under that same principle, and Sisko's like, no. Why did you ever think that was okay?
yeah. And I mean, Sisko even comes back on Jadzia for that too, for Klingon stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, as far as Q's appearance in DS9, I don't think it was really a way to carry it into Voyager. I think it was just something they tried and didn't really work, and then they just didn't bring him back. But yeah, it's me.
Yeah. He really doesn't work in the darker shows when you think about it, other than Picard. He really he works in the more optimistic ones.
Do you think the Q may have inspired religious or god mythos on other planets?
All day. All day. Because I don't see them having any compunction about messing with the development of races in terms of as a rule. Though you would think if you're evolved enough to get to that place that you would have some, I believe our next question is going to be about, was you'd have something along those lines. I don't think I was superior or whatever. I don't necessarily know that I agree, that I think they do. But so I feel like, I think if you're going to be suddenly manipulating other species or even if it's just for fun or whatever else, being the trickster of that species, you'd end up being the Loki. You'd be the darker whatever of their pantheon. So I don't know that anybody took on being a one god for a race, but I think for sure they would have been like, oh, you guys have a funny little tricky version thing, then yes, I'm going to be one of those.
Taking advantage of something, you mean? Like story. Okay, so like Dune, taking advantage of an already planted idea.
Yes.
Yeah, in this episode that I've brought the graphic up for here with Q and Vosh actually mentions to Q that, what did they call you on Brax? The god of lies?
Yeah.
So, yeah, they definitely have made an impact on other races in the galaxy.
And Q does mention that little Q is at the end of the episode where he's born, he mentions, he's already pushing planets out of orbit and igniting, supernovas, and he's acting like this is a good thing.
That's the other thing I think I took issue with. I think we talked a little bit about it before, was the notion, like, how do you, it's like superhero babies. How do you have a kid with that kind of power? You'd almost have to have been already established and then evolved to that versus being able to be born into that, which is why I'm not surprised when he says it's the first quote unquote born within the Q. Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's funny you say raising superhero babies, because I remember getting in trouble as a kid in church for saying, what would it have been like to spank Jesus? Because you have to admit, if he was born a baby, like, okay, you're changing the Savior's diaper now. Like,
that's awesome. That's great.
All right. Let's take this opportunity to do our favorite meme of the week. We came down to two that we couldn't quite decide on that we love. The first being this right here. Deep Space Nine is Wednesday, and Next Gen is, who is this?
Enid, her roommate.
I haven't seen the show.
The kind of a werewolf.
You got to see the show, man.
Yeah. I haven't even finished it, but I have to.
Jenna Ortega is brilliant. Like, she doesn't blink ever. That she did it in one of the first scenes they filmed, and the director noticed it, and he told her, keep doing that. So she never blinks. It's really it's really unnerving.
Yeah. If you notice it, they do the same thing, go way off tangent here, in the movie Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah.
The characters almost never blink because Edgar Wright wanted it to look more like a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I did not know that. That's cool.
Other favorites, a little more racy here.
Yes.
Spock, let's see what the new transwarp drive will do. Very well, Captain.
Whoever did that using that filter was awesome.
Mm-hmm. The funny thing is, Kirk actually makes a very pretty woman.
Very.
Sure does.
Awesome.
Man, they really lost out there. Like, I mean, they did Turnabout Intruder, but they should have really made Kirk a woman so he could experience what it would be like on the other end of his philandering.
Yeah, right.
Totally. Get him hit on by all kinds of officers. Heck yeah.
Oh, that'd be great.
Like, I think they really lost out there.
All right, so we've got a couple of Q questions here that really are some heavy stuff. Do the Q actually have superior morality?
It depends on whether or not their position in the universe being nigh omnipotent is genuine or not. By that I mean, if they're just some beings from our plane of existence who ended up being somehow granted or given or imbued or involved to that level, but if they're from already a higher order of being, then I think maybe they see us the way we would see an ant farm. At that point, yes, technically they have a higher moral authority than we do, because we are the equivalent of that much below them. So whereas one was an evolution from, the other one is kind of it's different, if that makes sense. I don't know.
I don't think they have a superior morality. I mean, we know they have a moral code because Q gets in trouble for his son's behavior and
for
has to go to bat for him. But I mean, and it's also been, I don't think it's actual canon. I think it's just beta canon that Q was being punished by being put in charge of humanity. But if I recall. So, I mean, they have a moral code, but I don't think they have a superior morality, although they like to think they do and impose it on others.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's
I
just
do agree with that.
it's something that Q literally says to, I can't remember if it's Picard or Janeway, that the reason that they're allowed to do what they do to everybody in the galaxy is because of their superior morality. Which, no, I don't think they have. I don't think they've shown that they have a superior morality. Oh, no, it's during the Amanda episode.
Yeah.
And I think it's in regards to, well, should we let omnipotent beings with unlimited power loose in the galaxy with no strings attached? I guess there's some amount of morality there. Superior, that's subjective.
So hang on one second. I will have an answer for you from Chat GPT. So I have asked the question, which is my new favorite thing to do, by the way. I asked Chat GPT, does the Q in Star Trek have superior morality? To which ChatGPT says the Q, a powerful godlike being in the Star Trek universe, is portrayed as having abilities and powers far beyond those of human beings. However, the morality is often depicted as being vastly different from that of humans. The Q are often shown to be highly advanced, but also highly narcissistic and lacking empathy. They are often portrayed as being motivated by their own desires and interests rather than by any sense of moral duty. This is something that is not unique to Q. It is a common trope for godlike beings in fiction. It's not clear if they have a superior morality, but it is clear that their perspective and understanding of morality is very different from that of humans. Talk about a passive, non-committal answer, but I thought that was interesting, right? Yeah. Like, right on, man.
So is that an AI?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. That's the reason I speak like everyone should know, because I've been getting inundated with it because I use it. All this stuff. ChatGPT is an AI conversational AI type tool, and it's pretty interesting to interact with it because it pulls from the breadth of knowledge on the internet up till 2021, and so its knowledge is limited past that. But yeah, it's pretty interesting.
I've been wanting to do just a completely joke series, and I've got a whole series of things that have been spit out from various text AIs around the internet where I put in a Star Trek topic, and most of it that it spits out is absolute nonsense and absolutely hilarious, and I just kind of want to read it all deadpan. I just haven't had time to get around to putting that together. But
nice.
Yeah. Cool. AI is getting really, really interesting.
Absolutely.
Ask an AI a question about superior morality. Man, the times we live in. So the next big question we had, are the Q actually omnipotent? Or did they just tell everyone that and have enough tricks up their sleeves to keep them safe? There's two big pieces that suggest that they might not be as omnipotent as they claim. And I'm not even talking about the Civil War. The very first appearance of Q in Encounters at Farpoint, the ensign at the op station pulls out a phaser, And Q immediately freezes him, and then he's like, "Would thou be caught unaware by," however he says it, very Shakespeareanly. But basically, would you let humans put you in a situation where you could be taken down? And then the Q in the first Voyager episode, Death Wish, he tells Tuvok, "We might appear immortal, but we aren't." And then Tuvok presses him on it, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not going any further."
Mm-hmm.
It could be that just the combination that they can bounce around in space as much as they want makes them look immortal, like I think was brought up earlier.
Yep.
Or omnipotent. Plus, if they have incredibly long lifespans, I mean, to a mayfly, we appear immortal, for instance, because they live for 48 hours.
True.
Agreed.
But to us, a bloody desert tortoise is immortal because those things can live for 200 years. So, that's a goddamn that picture. I'm sorry, but that picture looks like it looks like something you'd find on an adult site that you stumble on or something.
Oh, I didn't even do the one with the half butt shot. Here, let me take it away.
The butt of Q, no thanks.
Oh, those aren't even his colors.
Those are his civvies.
Yeah. I like how it looks like it's literally made from the same fabric that makes the wall behind him.
Right?
Oh my god. You never even caught that. You're right. That's awesome.
Although although that it could be just to show as another reinforce the idea that he's human there.
Yeah.
It's very neutral colors, not as decadent,
Loud,
flamboyant stuff that he normally wears.
Or his admiral outfit, because you notice he always appears as an admiral at minimum. He never appears as anything lower than who he's dealing with.
But he does appear as a captain a couple of times, but yeah, he's always at least on par.
Yeah. That looks like a drunk night in college.
As far as going back to the actual question, I'm really not sure that the Q are omnipotent. I think they just have so many tricks, and they have access to so many above powers, whether it be technology based or just pure godlike snap your fingers powers that we see. I think they're a little closer to mortal than we take for granted.
Well, Trelane had his machine behind the mirror painting or whatever on the wall. That was the source of his power.
Yeah.
And
well, not all of his power, because he even points out that he's got other tricks and other things to fall back on.
And I mean, it's a common thing in science fiction. Even Kirk said it, any sufficiently advanced species is going to appear, what is it? Any sufficiently advanced technology would appear like magic to those who haven't reached that level yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's their secret.
I swear his look was modeled on Elvis, like the face and the hair.
Yeah. And Q was telling Riker in now I can't even remember. I just watched the episode. Talking about how the Q was worried about how humanity could progress to be more powerful than the Q. If they're supposedly all knowing, all seeing, what is supposed to be more powerful than that exactly?
That is a really good question.
I think higher orders of magnitude, higher orders of consciousness, and sort of maybe. I mean, that's really the only place you have left to go. You know what I mean? The only thing you have left to go is literally having someone pull back the curtain of the universe and go, "Hey, what's going on?" You know what I mean? That's the only thing I think you can do. So it's
because even the godlike entity at the center of the galaxy or whatever that was put there, I mean, even he's got limitations, or he could get out of there if he wanted to.
Right, but he needs a starship.
He apparently can't get out of the barrier that a starship can just fly through.
And then there's the one that in the same book series, there was one that's outside our galaxy as well. It can't get in. So
that's really just one giant inter-universal Postmates. Dude, I'm just trying to bring you your food. Can you let me in, please? Can you just let me in? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we only had one more regular question here. Is Q's relationship dynamic with his son realistic or no?
I threw that out there knowing you and Scott are both parents, so.
That's true, but I'm still not this far in Voyager yet.
Oh,
And I don't have a son, but yes, because parent-child relationships are not perfect, and if we show them as over-the-top beautiful, like in Voyager's real life at the beginning with the Doctor, it doesn't make any sense, and it's really trashy.
Yeah.
Fair. That's
coming
fair.
from the outside as somebody who just works with kids, I have to say the teenage rebellion thing was pretty well written, because I see that I actually see this with some of my students where I swear they get to an age and I'm like, I always joke that the scariest thing in the world to deal with, even for a teacher, is a teenager, because it's like a switch goes off in their brain. And even though I know the neurological reasons why that happens, it's like sometimes I'm standing there and I see a kid just totally lip off to their parent, and I'm going, man, my dad would have backhanded me through a wall for saying that.
Oh, fast.
Oh, that's interesting, doll.
I don't know that they have that power. They don't have the power. I don't believe the Q have the power of life and death. That's why I said I don't believe. I believe he saved Picard's life right before he was fully quote unquote dead. I believe they can only manipulate things on this plane. Nothing's told me that fact, by the way. There's no, but I'm just conjecturing based on everything I've seen, because that manipulation of life and death, that's not a simulacra or an illusion or something just to show you like you're living through a holodeck program, is never shown to be their ability. And I would think that would be something that would be flaunted at some point, and it's not.
Because yeah, that's the one power we would never do see, is the life and death thing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that one Q who did want to commit suicide, like he had to get the Q to allow him to suicide.
Yeah,
it's true.
He didn't even have the power to end his own life. Like,
yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, he had to become mortal. Though, in the second episode in season 1 of TNG, Worf and Wesley both get stabbed, and then Riker brings them. They're not necessarily dead, though. They're just wounded at that point. So, and in that same episode, Riker, the whole thing is about Riker bringing back a dead child, and he doesn't, but we don't know that he can't. So,
it's fair.
Now I'm thinking that scene from Aladdin where the genie says that one of the wishes he can't grant is bringing people back from the dead, and he turns into like this gross zombie
Not
thing.
a creepy picture. I don't like doing it.
Yeah, like that.
Wait, no, he did say I don't like doing it. Does that mean he could actually do it, but that's how it ends up looking, so he just doesn't?
Probably.
That's how I always took it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
Does anybody else have any Q-like questions or any Trek questions?
I'm trying to think of anything that we kind of we haven't really. We've covered most of this omnipotent stuff and Q stuff. So, okay, I have one. Why do you think Star Trek has leaned so heavy on cosmic beings versus something like, say, Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica or other science fiction stuff that similarly takes place in space? And yet we've leaned I say we because we're of a community, leaned very heavy into these kind of stories, because there's a lot of them in the old series and this different species evolving and whatnot and things of that nature. The stories of bigger, like Guinan species and this and that. There are all these people who touch something bigger. The time creatures from Time Zero and whatnot. Like, what were they? I mean, why does Star Trek lean so heavy into cosmic style beings? Is that just because that's where our sci-fi began, or is there something more to that?
Well, I'm thinking it's funny you say like you use Star Wars and Battlestar to compare, because Star Wars and Battlestar are both examples of what they call the used future. So like we see a lot of old technology they don't know how to work anymore, technology that's cobbled together, things like that. So for them, a superior technology would be a threat. Whereas in Star Trek, I mean, they've kind of made it, there isn't a technology that doesn't get defeated in an episode. Every time we see a supercomputer, it gets defeated by logic, or every time we see superior technology, it's defeated with, a torpedo or something. Like, there's always a way to, like there's always a way for us to understand it if it's technology in Star Trek. But the one thing we can't understand is the literal final frontier, which is, in this case, the omnipotent beings. Whereas in Star Wars, they have more the religious side already with the Force. And I mean, in the book series, they also have the beings that exist outside the Force. And for them, it's used future, and Battlestar, it's the same thing. It's used future because the Cylons have wiped most of it out. So, you know, the only thing that's scarier to them is more technology because they don't have the ability to defeat it. At least it's my theory.
I think it's a multifold answer here. First of all, Gene Roddenberry kind of made this series, or at least after TOS got started, as almost an atheist's religion. And there was a lot of that in the back of his mind, and he always wanted to touch on religious stuff without the show becoming religious. Also, Star Trek as a whole is more shades of gray storytelling as opposed to black and white. Here's the bad guy, here's the good guys, you know, in between.
Blue makes him good, red laser sword makes him bad.
Exactly.
Right, clearly. White hat, blue, white hat, black hat. Right.
So when you start bringing religion into it and you want to talk about it in a shades of gray way, yeah, you can bring more of these religious godlike figures down as bringing them down to our level, as opposed to other shows where they aren't at all, and they're not trying to explore those extra facets of reality. The answer is basically Gene Roddenberry in a nutshell.
Sure, no, right on. And I think that
atheistic, because now that I'm thinking about it, like there's that scene in Babylon 5 where they all explore each other's religions.
I actually love that scene.
Yeah, and they're like, and you got all the like the Minbari and everyone. They're like, well, where's the bells? Where's the gongs? And then he goes along and he's like, this is a Hasidic Jew, this is a Muslim, this is a Buddhist monk, and he's going through all like the varied Earth religions. But I mean, Star Trek really is the only one where humanity, or whoever is supposed to represent humanity, is left religion behind.
But see, and that's what I was about to get into right before you started this line of thought. It's the one thing I did always appreciate, and I'm gonna out myself about this. I am very deeply spiritual, and some might even call me religious in my private life. But at the same time, I've always appreciated and loved how Star Trek always acknowledged there are things we don't necessarily know or understand how they work, what they are. There are things that go beyond us that we cannot necessarily explain, and we're willing to say that could be that things exist, like you said, that last final frontier of whatever that is, the man behind the curtain, if you will, you know, that there's stuff out there. And I love that. I love the idea that we don't know, and that's okay. And I think that's always been a through line.
DS9's prophets.
Yeah.
When Sisko says, you know, whether or not you believe they're gods, they do take an interest in the lives of the Bajorans.
There you go. That's fair. Yeah, I like it. Oh man, it's been fun.
Yeah. Anybody have anything else before we wrap up?
I just hope we see more Q in Lower Decks.
Oh, dude, I would love it. Bring Delancey back
fun.
for some of that stuff, man. Why not?
Especially because it doesn't matter that he's getting old. They just need his voice.
Or Prodigy.
Yeah.
Oh, Prodigy.
I just love the scene in Lower Decks where he's in his judge chair, like racing after everybody down.
Mariner's just like, no, Q, we're not dealing with this today. It's like, oh, come on.
Yeah, I want a whole episode where it's just a weird game like we see there, where it's like 8 games mashed into one thing.
Right.
Let's make that the whole episode. It'd be great.
Oh, so Move Along Home, but with Q?
Oh God, I hate it so much.
Okay.
No.
But Lower Decks would do that the right way.
Oh, they totally
They'd
would.
lean into it being funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's like when Mariner's mom was possessed by the ghost of whatever, the spirit of whatever, and all I could think of is the Data version that they were kind of spoofing on that thing where Data had the whole, you know, the mask on his face, and I was like, that's awesome. So yeah, they would do it better. Is my point. They would totally do it better.
Or like the Doctor when he was in Seven's implant.
Yes.
It's like, well, a glass of wine can loosen tongues. One does not excuse the other 8. And I'm thinking, poor Seven probably feels like she's going to explode.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, thanks to my co-hosts for joining us on Buffer Time, and thanks to all of you for watching. If you enjoyed the program, please consider a like and subscribe below. We'll see you back here next Saturday with the topic of Badmirals. Until then, peace and long life.